People often wonder what makes someone truly humble. They see famous faces on screens, hear stories of wealth, and imagine that fame must change the way a person walks, talks, or treats others. But every once in a while, a story appears that shakes those ideas. It makes people stop, breathe, and think. And this story begins with Keanu Reeves, not on a stage, not on a movie set, but on a quiet street where no cameras were meant to be. The evening air was cool, carrying the smell of rain that had fallen earlier. The street was half empty, a few people rushing past, holding umbrellas. A bus stop sat under a flickering light. At that moment, Keanu was walking alone, no bodyguards, no attention drawn to him. He carried himself like an ordinary man, his dark jacket slightly wet at the shoulders, his eyes calm and quiet. There was no sound of applause, no spotlight, just him and the silence of a half-forgotten road. At the corner, an old man struggled with a heavy grocery bag. The bag had torn slightly and apples had rolled onto the wet ground. People passed by quickly, some glancing, some pretending not to see. The old man bent down slowly, his hands trembling, trying to pick them up. The rainwater soaked his sleeves. The sound of footsteps hurried past him, but no one stopped. Keanu saw this from a short distance. For a moment, he paused. Here was the choice. Keep walking, stay unnoticed, stay hidden. But humility does not only live in thoughts. It shows itself in action. Without hesitation, he walked over, knelt down on the wet ground, and began picking up the apples. He did not care that his jeans soaked through. He did not care that others might glance at him with surprise. He simply gathered the fallen apples, one by one, placing them gently back into the old man's bag. The old man looked up, his eyes wide. He recognized the face before him, but he did not speak. He whispered almost to himself, "Thank you." His voice carried both relief and disbelief. Keanu gave him a small smile, the kind that does not need words. "It's okay," he said softly. "Bags can break. We just fix what we can." That line stayed in the air like a quiet echo. It was not about groceries anymore. It was about life. Bags break. People fall. Mistakes happen. Humility is not about avoiding them. It is about helping pick up the pieces without judgment, without expecting applause. Yet what no one expected was what happened next. A young woman nearby watching this scene stepped forward. She had tears in her eyes. She said, "You don't know what this means to me. I've had a hard day. I thought no one cared about small kindness anymore. But watching you now, it gave me hope." Keanu stood up slowly, his expression thoughtful. He did not shrug it off or wave it away. He looked at the young woman with the same calm respect he gave the old man. "Hope is never gone," he said quietly. "Sometimes it just waits for us to notice it." That simple exchange created a ripple. The few people who had ignored the old man suddenly felt something stir inside them, guilt mixed with admiration. One man bent down and tied the old man's bag with a piece of string from his pocket. Another offered to call him a cab. The crowd that had walked past before now leaned in to help, moved by the simple act of humility from someone they never expected to see there. For Keanu, this moment was nothing extraordinary. To him, it was natural. But to the people watching, it was unforgettable. It was not a movie scene, yet it felt more real than anything on screen. In that instant, humility revealed its true power. Not as weakness, not as silence, but as quiet strength that moves hearts without shouting. As the old man left, his bag now secure, he turned once more. His eyes met Keanu's. He did not speak his thoughts aloud, but his look said everything. Respect, gratitude, wonder. When Keanu continued walking down the dim street, he blended back into the crowd like he had never been there. Yet the memory stayed behind with those who witnessed it. And that was the hidden truth of humility. It does not need recognition. It plants itself quietly in the hearts of people, growing stronger with every small act. What the world did not know was that this one evening, on a rain-soaked street, would later spark a chain of events that revealed deeper layers of Keanu's life. Layers that no headline had ever captured. Because humility is not just a single act. It is a pattern, a way of living, a truth that shows itself again and again when tested. And soon, Keanu would face tests far greater than a torn grocery bag. Tests that would bring him face to face with loss, trust, betrayal, and the strength of human connection. And this is where the story truly begins. The next morning, the city moved with its usual rush. Trains clattered, horns echoed, and footsteps filled the sidewalks. But somewhere in the middle of this noise, Keanu sat quietly in a small corner cafe. He liked places where no one expected him. The cafe smelled of fresh bread and the sound of cups clinking against saucers filled the air. He sat at a wooden table by the window, sipping his coffee slowly, his eyes distant. He kept replaying the image of the old man from the night before. It was not just about apples or a broken bag. It was about how quickly people had walked away, how easy it was for the world to look down, to stay busy, to avoid seeing. But he also remembered how once he acted, others found courage to act too. That thought gave him quiet strength. Humility was not about standing above. It was about standing beside. As he sat there, a young waiter approached. The boy looked nervous, carrying a notepad in his hand. He hesitated, then spoke. "Sir, I know who you are. I hope it's okay if I say something." Keanu nodded gently. "Of course." The boy's voice shook as he spoke. "Last night, I saw you helping that old man. I was across the street delivering food. I wanted to help, but I froze. I thought, no one else is helping, why should I? But then I saw you kneel down. It woke me up. Today I promised myself, I won't ignore anyone again." Keanu looked at him with quiet seriousness. That's how change begins. It's never too late. The boy smiled shyly, his eyes shining, then hurried away to serve another table. Keanu returned to his coffee, but deep inside, something stirred. Humility was not just about one moment. It was about planting seeds in others, seeds that would grow into something bigger than himself. But not all seeds grow easily. Not all eyes see kindness as strength. As he left the cafe, a group of men at another table whispered loudly. "Look at him," one said, pretending to be simple. "If I had his money, I wouldn't sit in a cheap cafe. He's acting humble just to look good." Another laughed. "Exactly. Humility is just another show for people like him." The words floated in the air, sharp and dismissive. Keanu heard them, but he did not stop. He walked past without reacting, his face calm. Yet inside, a small sting reminded him that humility often goes unnoticed, sometimes even mocked. Outside the cafe, a woman waited with her young daughter. She hesitated as Keanu walked out, then stepped forward. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I heard what they said inside. Don't listen to them. My daughter and we were there last night, too. You didn't just help that old man. You helped all of us remember to care." The little girl looked up, holding a small flower in her hand. She offered it shyly to Keanu. "For you," she whispered. Keanu bent down, accepted the flower, and smiled gently. "Thank you. This means more than you know." He tucked the flower into his jacket pocket and continued down the street. The voices of judgment from the cafe tried to follow him, but the child's simple gift drowned them out. Humility was not about defending yourself against critics. It was about carrying the quiet truth even when misunderstood. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. His phone buzzed. It was a call from an old friend, a director he had worked with years ago. The voice on the line was strained. "Keanu, I need your help. It's not about a film. It's personal. Can we meet?" Without hesitation, Keanu agreed. They arranged to meet at a quiet park near the river. When he arrived, his friend was already there, pacing nervously. His clothes looked wrinkled, his eyes tired. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice heavy. "I didn't know who else to call." They sat on a bench under the wide branches of an oak tree. The friend's story spilled out in broken sentences. He had trusted the wrong people, invested his savings in a project that collapsed. Now he faced debts he could not pay, and worse, shame he could not escape. "Everyone thinks I'm a failure," he whispered, his hands shaking. "They've all turned their backs." Keanu listened quietly, his face calm but his heart heavy. He did not interrupt, did not rush to give answers. When his friend finished, Keanu spoke softly. "Failure is not the end. It is a season. It passes. What matters is how you stand in the middle of it." His friend looked at him, tears filling his eyes. "Easy for you to say. You're admired. People respect you." Keanu shook his head slowly. "Respect is not given by success. It is given by how we treat others even in our lowest moments. Humility teaches us that. When we are broken, we see the truth more clearly. For a moment, the two men sat in silence. The sound of the river filled the background, steady and calm. What Keanu did next was unexpected. He took out his own notebook, wrote down the number of a lawyer he trusted, and slid the paper into his friend's hand. "Call him. He will help you find a way through this. And if you need time, you'll have it. I'll stand with you." His friend broke down, unable to speak, tears running down his face. People walking by glanced at the scene, some curious, some touched. But for Keanu, it was not about who watched. It was about standing beside someone in their storm, even if no one else would. That evening, as he walked home, Keanu thought about how fragile life could be, how quickly respect could vanish, how easily people judged failure. And yet humility gave strength to endure it all. It was not loud, not glamorous. It was quiet, steady, unshakable. But what Keanu did not know was that this act of kindness toward his friend would soon bring him into a much larger storm. Because when you choose humility, you do not only lift others, you also invite trials that test the very core of your own soul. And the next test was already on its way. Night had fallen over the city, and the streets glowed with scattered lights. Keanu walked home quietly, his mind heavy with thoughts about his friend. The river, the tears, the trembling voice, they stayed with him. He believed kindness should be private, but sometimes the world finds ways to drag private moments into the open. The next morning, his phone buzzed again, but this time, it was not a friend. It was a reporter. The voice on the line was sharp. "Mr. Reeves, is it true you were seen helping a bankrupt director in the park yesterday? People say you're secretly paying his debts. Is this a publicity stunt?" Keanu's heart sank. He never wanted his friend's pain to become a headline. He said firmly, "There's no story here. Please respect his privacy." Then he hung up, but by evening the story was everywhere. Online articles, social media posts, even television screens showed blurred photos of Keanu sitting on the park bench with his crying friend. Headlines twisted the truth. Some praised him for being kind. Others mocked him, saying he was playing the role of humble star again. The cruelest part was the effect on his friend. The man called him late that night, his voice broken. "They're laughing at me, Keanu. They say I'm begging for your money. I never wanted this. I feel even smaller now." Keanu closed his eyes, pain tightening his chest. "Listen to me," he said softly. "Their words do not define you. Storms always make the loudest noise, but noise fades. What stays is who you are, and I know you're stronger than this." His friend did not answer. Only silence filled the line. The next day, Keanu walked through the streets to clear his mind. He kept his head low, but whispers followed him. Some smiled warmly. Others scoffed. He could feel the weight of judgment pressing in. Then, as he turned down a narrow alley, he noticed a small figure sitting on the ground. It was a teenage boy no older than 15. His clothes were dirty and his face was pale. Beside him was a broken guitar, its strings tangled. The boy stared at the ground, his eyes dull. Keanu stopped. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. The boy looked up slowly. "I used to play music here," he said in a weak voice. "People would drop coins, but last week someone broke my guitar on purpose. Since then, no one looks at me. I feel invisible." Keanu knelt beside him the same way he had with the old man's apples. He picked up the guitar carefully, turning it in his hands. "It's not gone," he said softly. "It just needs someone to believe in it again. Like you." The boy's eyes filled with tears. "But no one believes in me." Keanu smiled faintly. "I do." Without another word, he walked into a small shop at the corner and bought a set of strings. He returned, sat down on the cold pavement, and began fixing the guitar right there. People passing by slowed down, some curious, some whispering. After a few minutes, the boy strummed softly. The sound was shaky but alive again. Tears ran down his cheeks as he whispered, "Thank you." Keanu stood and placed a few bills in the boy's cap. Then he looked at the crowd that had gathered. "We all walk these streets," he said gently. "Sometimes we forget the ones sitting in the shadows. But shadows disappear when even one person brings light." A silence fell. Then, one by one, people stepped forward, dropping coins and bills into the boy's cap. The boy's face lit up. his shoulders straightening as hope returned to his eyes. As Keanu walked away, he knew humility was never about saving the whole world. It was about saving one person at a time, and yet, even small acts create ripples that touch many lives. But that night, something unexpected happened again. When he returned home, he found a letter slipped under his door. The handwriting was rough, almost angry. It said, "Stop pretending. You think humility makes you special? But you're just fooling people. I will show the world who you really are." Keanu stared at the words, his hand tightening on the paper. This was no ordinary critic. This was someone who had decided to make his humility a target. He folded the letter quietly, placed it on the table, and sat down. For the first time in days, doubt crept into his heart. Was he truly making a difference, or was he only drawing more darkness onto himself and those around him? The night grew colder. The city outside buzzed with noise, but inside his home, silence pressed heavy against his chest. He knew storms were coming, and this time, they would not be easy to face. The letter stayed on the table all night. Keanu did not tear it apart, nor did he throw it away. He stared at it in the dim light, the words echoing in his mind. "Stop pretending. I will show the world who you really are." It was not just an insult. It was a threat. By morning, the city was waking up with noise and movement. But inside Keanu's apartment, silence wrapped around him. He held the letter once more, wondering who could have sent it. Was it one of the reporters, hungry for a story? Was it someone from his past, someone who carried resentment? Or was it simply a stranger who hated kindness because it reminded them of their own emptiness? He placed the letter inside a drawer, but the unease stayed with him. Humility had always been his compass, but now he felt eyes watching him, waiting to twist even his simplest actions. That afternoon, he decided to step outside. Sometimes walking among people gave him strength. The air was cool, and the street smelled of roasted chestnuts from a vendor at the corner. He bought a small bag and gave the vendor extra money. The man looked surprised, then whispered, "Bless you, sir." But even in that small exchange, Keanu felt it, the weight of the hidden threat. Was someone in the crowd watching? Would another act of kindness be turned into a weapon against him? As he walked further, he heard raised voices near a bus stop. A young man and a middle-aged stranger were arguing. The young man had dropped his wallet, and the stranger picked it up but refused to return it. The argument grew louder, attracting curious glances but no action. Keanu stepped closer. "Excuse me," he said gently, his voice calm but firm. "I think that belongs to him." The stranger scowled. "Mind your own business. Everyone knows people like him don't deserve anything." His words dripped with bitterness. The young man's face flushed with anger and shame. Keanu stepped between them slowly, his posture calm but unshakable. "Respect is not about who deserves it," he said softly. "It is about what is right. Let go of the wallet." For a tense moment, silence hung heavy. The stranger's eyes burned with defiance. Then, with a sharp motion, he threw the wallet on the ground and walked away. The young man picked it up quickly, his hands shaking. He looked at Keanu, his voice breaking. "Thank you. No one else would stand up for me." Keanu placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Never measure your worth by how others treat you. You are more than their words." The boy nodded, tears filling his eyes. But as Keanu turned to leave, he noticed something. Across the street, a man stood still, watching him carefully. The man wore a dark coat, his face half hidden under the shadow of his cap. His eyes did not move away even for a second. Keanu felt a chill crawl down his spine. Was this the one who sent the letter? He walked away calmly, pretending not to notice. But his heart beat faster. Humility was about courage, but even courage trembled when faced with the unknown. Later that evening, back at home, Keanu received another message. This time it was slipped under his door in the same rough handwriting. "You think you inspire people, but soon they will see the truth. I will break the image you hide behind." He read the words slowly. They carried not only anger but obsession. Whoever this was, they wanted more than attention. They wanted destruction. For the first time, doubt shook him deeply. Humility had guided him through loss, pain, and years of public life. But how do you stay humble when someone uses your goodness against you? How do you stand calm when shadows chase you with no face, no name? Instead of sleeping, He sat by the window, staring at the city lights. Cars moved like rivers of fire. People hurried across the streets. Life flowed as usual. But inside, he felt the storm growing. Then, in that quiet darkness, his phone buzzed again. This time it was the teenage boy with the broken guitar. The boy's voice on the line was full of excitement. "Sir, I played tonight." People stopped to listen. They filled my cap with money. I even bought dinner for my mother. She smiled for the first time in weeks. "I just wanted to tell you, you gave me that chance." Keanu closed his eyes. Tears welled at the corners. In that single moment, the noise of threats faded. The boy's words reminded him why humility mattered. It was not about image. It was about real lives, about broken strings becoming music again. Still, deep down, he knew the darkness had not ended. The letters would continue. The shadow man would appear again. And soon, the true test of humility would not only be about helping others, it would be about surviving when the world tried to tear him apart, and that test was closer than he imagined. The next day began with a heavy sky. Clouds hung low, and the streets seemed quieter than usual, as if the city itself sensed something coming. Keanu tried to carry on as always. He walked to the small market, bought bread and fruit, greeted the shopkeepers with his gentle nods. But the unease followed him like a shadow that refused to leave. He kept remembering the man in the dark coat, the one who had watched him from across the street. There had been no words, but the stare carried weight. It was not curiosity. It was not admiration. It was something colder, sharper, filled with hidden anger. By afternoon, Keanu went to the park again. He hoped fresh air would quiet his thoughts. Families sat on benches. Children ran laughing. An old couple fed pigeons. It should have been peaceful. But then he felt it. That same stare. When he turned, the man in the dark coat was there again. Standing near a tree, half in shadow, his eyes fixed on him. Keanu's steps slowed. He could feel his heart beating harder, but he did not show fear. He walked calmly toward the man. "You've been watching me," Keanu said softly. "Why?" the man smirked, his voice low but sharp. "Because I know what you really are. You walk around pretending to be humble, pretending to care. But I see through you. You're an actor. You fooled them all." Keanu looked at him carefully. There was anger in the man's face, but also pain, the kind that hides behind bitterness. "I'm not pretending," Keanu replied quietly. "I'm just living the way I know." The man stepped closer, his tone rising. "No, you act like kindness costs you nothing. But real people, people like me, we bleed for every scrap of respect. And when we fall, no one helps us up. So why should they believe you?" The word struck hard. Keanu felt the sting of truth hidden inside the anger. Many people did suffer alone. Many were ignored. But he also knew anger built walls where bridges could stand. "I believe everyone deserves respect," Keanu said softly. "Even you." For a second, the man froze. His eyes flickered with confusion, then hardened again. "Don't waste your soft words on me. I will show the world you're no different from anyone else." With that, he turned and walked away quickly, leaving Keanu standing under the tree. The encounter left a deep mark. Keanu walked home slowly, replaying every word. Was the man only angry, or was he planning something dangerous? Humility told him not to respond with anger, but wisdom whispered that ignoring danger could harm not only him, but others too. That night, his fears became real. When he returned home, he found his door slightly open. His chest tightened. He stepped inside carefully. The room looked almost the same, but on the table lay another letter. This one was different. "You will regret pretending. Tomorrow, everyone will see the truth. I will be there when your mask falls." Keanu sat down slowly, the paper shaking in his hand. Whoever this man was, he was no longer just watching. He was planning to act. But in the middle of this storm, a knock came at his door. It was the teenage boy with the guitar. His eyes were bright, his smile full of hope. "Sir, I wanted to show you something," he said, holding up a small notebook filled with songs he had written. "You told me to believe again. I started writing, 'I feel alive for the first time in years.'" Keanu took the notebook, turning its pages gently. The words were simple, raw, full of pain, but also light. He looked at the boy, his heart softening. "These are beautiful." "Keep writing. Your voice matters." The boy smiled. tears shining in his eyes. "If I ever play on a big stage, it will be because of you." After the boy left, Keanu sat in the quiet room. In one hand, he held the threatening letter. In the other, the boy's songbook filled with hope. And he realized something powerful. Humility always stands between two forces: the darkness that tries to destroy it, and the light it quietly creates in others. The next day would not be easy. The man in the dark coat had promised a confrontation. Keanu knew he could not avoid it, but he also knew he had to face it with the same strength that guided him through every storm. Because true humility is not silence in the face of threats. It is the courage to face them without losing kindness. And tomorrow, that courage would be tested more than ever. The morning came heavy with clouds, as if the sky itself carried the weight of what was about to happen. Keanu stepped out of his apartment with calm steps, but inside his chest, his heart beat faster than usual. He had not slept much. The man's letter had repeated in his mind all night. Tomorrow, everyone will see the truth. He walked through the city streets quietly, blending with the crowd. People glanced at him, some with warm smiles, some with curious whispers. But he kept his eyes steady. Humility was not about hiding from storms. It was about walking into them without letting fear change your path. As he reached the same park where the first meeting had happened, he saw a small crowd gathered near the center. His chest tightened. Something was wrong. At the front of the crowd stood the man in the dark coat. His eyes burned with a strange fire, and in his hand he held a stack of printed papers. He was shouting loudly, his voice sharp and bitter. "You think this man is a saint. You think he is humble, but it is all a performance. Look at him. An actor who plays roles on screen and off it. He helps the weak only when people are watching. He uses kindness to build his image." People turned their heads. Some gasped, some frowned. Keanu walked slowly forward. The man waved the papers in the air. "I have proof. Stories twisted, moments staged. I will not let you all be fooled." Keanu did not rush. He stepped into the center, his eyes steady, his face calm. "Let me speak," he said softly, but his voice carried through the silence that followed. The man sneered. "Go ahead. Tell them how pure you are." Keanu shook his head gently. "I am not pure. I am not perfect. I make mistakes. I fail. I hurt. But humility is not about being flawless. It is about remembering we are all the same, no matter how high or low we stand." The crowd shifted. People listened. The man's voice rose again, desperate.
"You see?"
More words. More performance. But before Keanu could answer, something unexpected happened. The teenage boy with the guitar stepped forward from the crowd. He held the small notebook in his hands. "He is not pretending," the boy said firmly. "When my guitar was broken, no one cared. No one even looked at me. He sat with me on the street. He fixed it. No cameras, no stage, just him and me. And because of that, I am standing here today with hope again." The boy's voice trembled, but his courage held. Then the young waiter from the cafe spoke. He listened to me when I said I froze in fear. He told me change is never too late. No one else would care to tell me that. He is not pretending. An old man in the crowd raised his hand slowly. It was the same man whose apples had fallen on the street that first night. His voice cracked as he said, "He picked up my apples with his own hands." No one else even stopped. If that is pretending, then may everyone pretend like that. The crowd's silence broke into murmurs. Faces softened, some with tears, some with shame. The man in the dark coat shouted louder, anger rising. "You are all blind! He has fooled you all!" He stepped closer to Keanu, his fists clenched, his body trembling. Keanu did not move back. He looked into the man's eyes with calm strength. "I am not your enemy," he said softly. "I see your pain. I hear your anger. But breaking others will not heal what broke inside you." For a long moment, the man stood frozen, his face twisted between rage and sorrow. The papers in his hand shook. Then, with a sharp motion, he threw them into the air. Sheets scattered like falling leaves, floating down across the park. The man turned and ran, disappearing into the crowd. Silence hung heavy again. The scattered papers landed on the ground, but when people picked them up, they found nothing but angry scribbles, accusations with no truth. Keanu stood quietly, his head lowered slightly. He did not raise his arms in victory. He did not smile with pride. He simply said, "I am no better than any of you. I only try to remember that kindness is the strength we all share. Humility is not about winning against hate. It is about not letting hate change who we are." The boy with the guitar stepped closer, his eyes wide with respect. "You didn't fight him back. You didn't shout. Why?" Keanu placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Because sometimes silence speaks louder than anger. And sometimes humility is the only answer strong enough to end a storm." The crowd stood still, the moment sinking deep into their hearts. What began as an attempt to destroy him had turned into proof of something greater. That humility was not weakness, but unshakable strength. But as Keanu walked away from the park, he knew the story was not over. Storms do not end with one encounter. They return, testing again and again, and his deepest test of humility was still waiting beyond the horizon. Days passed after the confrontation in the park, but the memory of it stayed alive in the hearts of those who were there. People spoke quietly of what they had seen. Not the anger, not the scattered papers, but the calmness of a man who faced rage without raising his voice. For many, it was the first time they had witnessed humility not as weakness, but as unshakable strength. But for Keanu, peace was still far away. Every night, as he sat by the window, he thought about the man in the dark coat. His words, his bitterness, the pain behind his anger, it lingered. He wondered where that man had gone. Had he disappeared into the city, swallowed by the noise? Or was he still waiting, building his anger into something larger? One evening, as Keanu walked home from the small cafe, he noticed someone sitting on the steps of his building. It was the same man. The dark coat was gone, replaced with worn clothes. His eyes were no longer burning with fire, but heavy with exhaustion. His hands trembled as he held his head low. Keanu stopped in front of him. The man looked up slowly, his face pale, his voice rough. "I lost everything," he whispered. "My job, my family, my respect. I hated you because people admired you while I drowned. I thought if I destroyed you, I would feel less small. But now, I feel emptier than ever." The air between them was heavy. Keanu could feel the man's brokenness, raw and real. It would have been easy to walk past him, to turn away, to let bitterness face its own end. But humility does not abandon even those who wound us. Keanu sat down beside him on the cold steps. "Pain can make us cruel," he said gently. "But cruelty never heals pain. I don't hate you. I see you, and I know you can stand again if you choose to." The man's eyes filled with tears he tried to hide. "Why would you care after what I did?" Keanu's voice was steady. "Because someone has to care. If no one does, the world only gets darker. Humility means remembering we are all human, even when we fall the hardest." For a long time, the man said nothing. Then slowly, his body shook, and he broke down, tears running down his face. Neighbors watched from windows, some surprised, some moved. They had expected anger, maybe even revenge. Instead, they saw two men sitting together, one broken by bitterness, the other steady with compassion. From that day, things began to shift. The man returned often, not with anger, but with questions, with apologies, with small attempts to rebuild his life. It was not quick, and it was not easy, but humility gave him the space to start again. Weeks later, the boy with the guitar played his music in the same park. His voice had grown stronger, his songs filled with light. The young waiter who once froze in fear now spoke confidently with customers, remembering the words that change is never too late. The old man with the apples still walked the same streets. But now people often stopped to help carry his bags, and through it all, Keanu walked quietly, never demanding attention, never raising himself higher. His actions rippled outward, unseen and unstoppable. In the end, the truth of humility was simple but powerful. It was not about lowering yourself or pretending to be small. It was about lifting others without needing to rise above them. It was about standing firm when storms came, about choosing compassion when the world expected anger, about healing even those who once tried to break you. One evening, as the sun set in golden light across the city, Keanu sat alone on a bench watching people pass by. His eyes were calm, his face soft. He did not need applause. He did not need headlines. Because the real victory of humility is not being seen. It is being remembered in the quiet change it leaves behind. And that was the moment he proved what many people spend a lifetime searching for. That true strength is not power, not wealth, not fame. It is the quiet courage to be humble, even when the world misunderstands.